House of Representatives Committee invites high-ranking federal government officials over alleged loss of $2.4 billion from illegal sale of crude oil. All Progressives Congress (APC) asks tribunal to dismiss petition filed by Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. Police arrest 3 people after suspected hired assassins killed APC chieftain in Delta State. On the foreign scene, junior doctors in the United Kingdom commence full-day strike in England. Good evening. This is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Damilola Raphael. The House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Oil Theft is inviting several high-ranking officials of the federal government over its investigation into the alleged loss of over $2.4 billion in revenue from illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil exports in 2015. Some of the officials invited today to answer questions are the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, and the Secretary General of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. Also summoned are the Acting Accountant General of the Federation, Silva Okole-Abo, and the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. The committee is also concerned about the disparity in figures from crude oil sales from 2011 to 2014 and is accusing the Minister of Finance of approving payment to whistleblowers in variance with the whistleblower policy. The Ad Hoc House Committee is investigating the whistleblower's allegation of illegal sale of 48 million barrels of Nigeria's Bonny Light crude in China in 2015, valued at $2.4 billion. The committee in February had accused the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, as well as Interpol on what it described as interference in the committee's investigation. The All Progressives Congress (APC) is asking the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to dismiss the petition filed by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi. On March 1st, standard bearer of the APC, Bola Tinubu, was declared the winner of the presidential election. However, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and Labour Party rejected the result, and both parties approached the tribunal with separate petitions to challenge Senator Tinubu's victory. But the APC, through Thomas Ojo, a member of the party's legal team, countered the petition filed by Mr. Obi. The party also challenged the court's jurisdiction to hear the petition on the grounds that it is, amongst others, incompetent. Amongst the APC's grounds for challenging the competence of the petition is that Mr. Obi was not a valid member of the Labour Party at the time of the election. The APC argued that he was a member of the PDP until May 24, 2022. Meanwhile, in Lagos State, PDP governorship candidate Abdulaziz Adediran says he is calling for the disqualification of the All Progressives Congress (APC) and the Labour Party candidates in the election for non-compliance with the Electoral Act 2022, as well as the guidelines of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). In the petition, the petitioners said APC did not comply with the INEC timetable and schedule of activities for the 2023 general election, which stipulated that all political parties must give 21 days notice to INEC before the conduct of the primary election. While INEC is the first respondent, APC candidate Babajide Sanwo-Olu, his deputy Obafemi Hamzat, LP governorship candidate Gbadebo Rhodes-Vival, and the Labour Party are the other respondents. Besides the allegation of non-compliance with relevant provisions of the Electoral Act 2022, Mr. Adediran added that at the time of the governorship election, the respondents were not qualified to contest the election. He asked that all votes cast for them in the election be declared wasted. A Zuba Magistrates Court in Abuja today refused to grant bail to one Obiajulu Uja, who protested against the president-elect Bola Tinubu while on board an Ibom Air Abuja-Lagos-bound flight. Mr. Raja, who was disembarked from the plane and handed over to the police, had filed an application for bail through his counsel, Ejike Ugo. However, Magistrate Mohammed Ismail dismissed the application, holding that the application was premature. He held that the exhibits attached to the application did not say the defendant was unfit for trial, but rather indicated he was of unsound mind. He held that while the mental capacity of a defendant is an issue, the court has the duty to ascertain the medical situation of such defendant. The magistrate subsequently turned down the bail application and ordered that Mr. Raja be held at the Kuje Correctional Center of Nigerian Correctional Service. He further orders the head of the center to take the defendant to a government hospital to ascertain his mental capacity. Magistrate Ismail then adjourned until April 20th for report and hearing. Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike says Dino Melaye does not have what it takes to be governor of Kogi State. Senator Melaye is amongst the contenders screened by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, ahead of the party's primary election. Speaking at a media chat in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital today, Governor Wike said if Senator Melaye wins the party's ticket, he cannot defeat other candidates in the race to secure victory in the Kogi governorship election scheduled for November 11th.
That PDP wants to win the election. And what you will do is to give ticket to Dino Melaye, and you say that tomorrow that you are rigged when you have already started rigging yourself. I mean, if a party, and that's what I say, is this party serious at all? Do they really want to win the election, or they just want to present a candidate? Are we saying that we want to win an election, or we want to have a candidate? There are two things there. There are two things. As a party, you watch the ruling party. What did they do? Where have they picked their candidates? What is their strategy? What are we going to do? You don't just come because, oh, General was the one abusing people on behalf of your party. Therefore, that entitles him to fly the flag of the party in Kogi State.
Turning to security, the Ondo State Police Command has arrested 2 suspects for alleged involvement in lynching a suspected internet fraudster, Tokwe Olorunfemi, to death in Akure, the state capital. The deceased was killed by a mob in the Joka area of the state due to reckless driving, which led to the deaths of 2 persons while 6 others sustained injuries. The mob also set Tokwe's car ablaze. Hours after the incident, spokesperson of the Ondo State Police Command, SP Fumilayo Odunlami, said the suspects would be charged to court after an investigation into the matter. She noted that it is yet to be confirmed that the deceased was an internet fraudster, as the mob accused him. She appealed to the public to always report such incidents to law enforcement agents and never take laws into their hands. A coalition of civil societies under the umbrella of the Osun Mastermind has advised Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke to be cautious in his newly found romance with a former governor of the state and incumbent Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola. They urged the governor to desist from taking up some of the policies embarked on by Ogbeni Aregbesola's administration, which the group noted is capable of running the state into insolvency. The Osun Mastermind, in its State of the State address for April, read by its Executive Director, Wasiu Oyedokunwale, describes the Ido Osun Airport project and Okwoimo Tablet of Knowledge project of the Aregbesola government as quite elephant endeavors, but the present administration must exercise restraints in continuing. The group also appealed to Governor Adeleke to sustain the employment of the 1,500 teachers undertaken by the immediate past administration of Adegboyega Oyetola, noting that government schools are in dire need of more manpower. The Osun Mastermind, however, commended the positive steps being taken by by the Adeleke administration in moving the state forward and cater to the welfare of her people. The group's leaders, including Wole Oladapo and Ayo Ologun, pointed to the free healthcare drive of the state government, road construction in the 9 federal constituencies of the state, and the decision to domesticate the startup act in the state. While commenting on the upsurge of kidnappings, killings, and crime in Osun State, the Osun masterminds urged Governor Adeleke to engage all security agencies in the state, including the state-owned Amotekun Corps, and work out new modalities with them that will ensure the security of lives and properties.
The governor openly expressing willingness to return appointment to schools leaves us worried that he may be getting tempted to go into the path of profligacy that characterized many policies of the Aregbesol's administration. If we were already not suspecting that the governor was being tempted or pushed to take some really wrong steps, the governor's speech when he visited Ogbeni Aregbesola in his Abuja office got us very worried. Governor Adeleke was quoted as saying, assuring the former governor that he will ensure completion of the Ido-Osun airport. We must state that the unprecedented waste of our state resources that went to the idea of constructing an airport in Ido-Osun is one that several successful governments must be worried about and possibly probe. A simple Google search will reveal how officials of the Aregbesola government admitted that state funds running into billions were spent on constructing the airport. Today we find nothing of worth on ground. We advise the governor to exercise serious restraints with his statement in support of any past policy in Osun. We are aware that he may have built some political friendship with the Aregbesola political tendency, but he must not allow himself to be used to drag Osun back into an era of financial recklessness and undertaking of white elephant projects that will push Osun back into insolvency. We are part of
a conference. One thing we have made clear is the reinstatement of the recruited teachers. Ditto for the recruited health workers, because we saw that even in the health centers, we don't have manpower. And the last administration, though at the twilight, also recruited as the recruited teachers staff for those health centers that have also now been disengaged. So it is important that if indeed the governor will claim to love the people, revitalization of, we're not talking about repainting or building. Revitalization of the primary health sector becomes a key driver for performance in how the governor will be rated in the area of health sector. So what we have done is not to say, don't do this other one.
That there is no government, no matter how irresponsible, that will not achieve something meaningful in its lifespan. Even if the administration lasts 72 hours, there will be something that government will do right. So there's no way you can throw the child away with the bathwater and say that an administration of 100 days or 4 years has not done anything meaningful. No matter how responsible that government is, it will do something that will be in the interest of the people. We must not lose, and the issue of borehole has always been an issue that only can 24 hours pass and somebody will not raise it. And the question we keep asking the retinue of media aides of the incumbent administration is, the first sign of responsibility for any government is accountability. If you had made the release before now that you are going to sink over 300 boreholes in different parts of the state, courtesy and sense of accountability demands that you give us a rundown of the location of those boreholes. I've had the spokesperson to the governor say journalists should go and investigate. To me, it is Bangladesh. It is not the duty of the journalists to do the duty of the spokesperson of the government.
In the meantime, Governor Ademola Adeleke has commended security agencies for their proactive actions to tame recent wave of insecurity in the state, even as he lauded the police for the arrest and prosecution of suspects in recent crimes. Speaking on behalf of the governor, Secretary to the state government, Honorable Teslim Igbalaye, said the state governor is happy with the arrest of kidnapping gangs, the tracking and apprehension of some criminals in the Oyo State, and the nabbing of some cultists involved in recent criminal conducts. A statement by a spokesperson to the governor, Malam Olawale Rashid, said the government is particularly happy that suspects are being arrested and arraigned in court, noting that this will strengthen the faith of the citizenry in the capacity of the state to protect them. Governor Adeleke further directed the security agencies to sustain the ongoing onslaught against men of the underworld. He assures the people of Osun State that the government is committed to securing their lives and properties, stressing that criminals have no abode in Osun State. Still in Osun State, the government today disclosed that the non-functioning of the reactivated streetlights on many major roads in the state is due to the activities of vandals and, to an extent, damage by reckless drivers. This comes after some motorists complained about the stress and danger they encounter at night on the roads. The government also called on residents of the state to be more vigilant and report anybody vandalizing streetlights to the nearest police station with immediate effect. Joseph Atewe completes the report.
As a result of the vandalized streetlights on some major routes in the state capital, Osogbo, motorists have been faced with the challenge of ceaseless darkness, attacks by armed robbers, and for some residents, low patronage to their business. With many of the streetlights installed under the past administration to serve as some sense of security and to beautify the roads, the cables have now been vandalized, undermining the government's efforts. For many road users in Osogbo, like Mr. Oladapo Oluwatobi and Mr. Akinwumi Mianza, it's been difficult accessing these roads with ease, as oftentimes the roads are always dark. Hence, they rely solely on the headlights of their cars. They want the Osun State government to urgently do the needful by repairing the lights.
It is not encouraging, as the road used to be black at night when someone is driving. But now I want to urge the current governor, because I know that he is capable of doing it, that they should intensify more effort on how they are going to make the street light okay at night. So even those evil people, they will not be able to be hiding under no light on the street.
What I'm praying for is that the government in the present government in the state is always clamoring for Imole. He wants light everywhere, and I pray he will be able to have it done, because that will bring light to the whole city.
Laying down some of the problems faced by the Osun State government in tackling the issue was the Senior Special Assistant to Governor Ademola Adeleke on Information, Honorable Oladele Bamiji, who also called on residents of the state to work hand in hand with the police to put a stop to cable theft, which has become a constant occurrence.
Yes, street light is a luxury complement of government efforts to beautify the environment, to curb crime, as the case may be. But as citizens, as law-abiding citizens, we must also do our own bargain and know well exactly to report to any incident that appeared unpalatable.
Just yesterday, a robbery incident happened around Abe with valuables carted away. This, the Senior Special Assistant to Governor Adeleke, Honorable Bamiji, says will be the last, as the Osun State government will do everything possible to find a lasting solution by fixing the streetlights, which might have been one the robbers capitalized on.
People can be rest assured that Governor Adeleke will surely do whatever need be done, especially at this time when it concerns especially security of lives and property. Our government will not tarry, will not waste much time to take steps to see its people were secured. And whatever need be done, this is a government that is operating on the premise of people's agitation, people's wish and will. Yes, it will always listen. Our governor will always listen to the people, what they are thinking, what they really want in all sectors.
The provision of functional street lights will, beyond every doubt, promote security, improve safety for road users, and increase the quality of life by artificially extending the work hours. The Osun State government have also called on those vandalizing the street lights to desist, as the government to do everything possible to put them behind bars if caught. Joseph Atewe, Western Spring Television.
You're watching News at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come. Police arrest 3 people after suspected hired assassin killed APC chieftain in Delta State. We will bring you more on this when we return.
Dramatist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts, Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works, Obakoso, Obawaja, and Moremi, took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Western Spring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history. Dramatist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts, Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works, Obakoso, Obawaja, and Moremi, took him beyond Africa to several parts of the world. By the time Duro Ladipo died on 11 March 1978, Nigeria's first cultural ambassador had acquired a towering image as an artist whose works adorned the frontage of Trenchard Hall, University of Ibadan. Western Spring Television identifies Duro Ladipo as a major character in history. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was an educationist and advocate of women's rights. She was recognized for her vitriolic comments against colonial policy of taxation as it affected the Nigerian women. Bere, as fondly addressed by her women followers, Fumilayo championed the initiation of universal adult suffrage, which gave an unprecedented leeway for women to contest elective offices and power to exercise voting rights. Married to a foremost educationist and teacher, Israel Oladotun Ransom Kuti, the first president of Nigeria Union of Teachers, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the mother of children who inherited her spirit of activism. Olufela and Be Ololari, the former, a renowned musical legend. She was the first female student of Abeokuta Grammar School and the first female to own and drive a car in Nigeria. The award recipient of Member of Order of Nigeria MON and Lenin Peace Prize, was born on 25th October 1900 and was killed on 13th April 1978 by rampaging road soldiers in Lagos. Western Spring Television identifies Fumilayo Ransom Kuti as a watershed character in history.
You're Welcome back. This is still News at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. House of Representatives Committee invites high-ranking federal government officials over alleged loss of $2.4 billion from illegal sale of crude oil. All Progressives Congress APC asks tribunal to dismiss petition filed by Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. Police arrest 3 people after suspected hired assassins killed APC chieftain in Delta State. On the foreign scene, junior doctors in the United Kingdom commence full-day strike in England. Gunmen suspected to be hired assassins have killed a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, Sylvester Efe Orobo, in Delta State. Police Public Relations Officer for Delta State Command, DSP Bright Edafe, confirmed the killing. According to reports, the APC stalwart was shot dead by the assailant who stormed his country home in Agbaro Ugeli North local government area of the state. The deceased was said to be the chairman of an APC support group in the locality. CPPRO affirmed that 3 suspects have been apprehended in connection with the gruesome murder, adding that investigation is ongoing. Inspector General of Police Usman Baba has promoted 6 senior police officers serving in Katsina State. Spokesman of the police command, Gambo Isa, was amongst those recently promoted to various ranks. Mr. Isa, along with 3 other police officers, were promoted from the rank of Superintendent of Police to the rank of Chief Superintendent of Police, CSP, while other 2 senior officers were promoted to the ranks of Deputy Commissioner of Police and Assistant Commissioner of Police. The decoration ceremony was held as the police officers' mass in Katsina today and had in attendance various heads of security agencies in the state. And more reactions have trailed the proposed bill which seeks to amend the Medical and Dental Practitioners Act 2004 to address the brain drain in the health sector. Sponsored by an All Progressives Congress lawmaker from Lagos, Ganiyu Johnson, the bill mandates Nigerian-trained medical and dental professionals to practice for 5 years before getting full license. Olayinka Ale has the rest of the story.
The House of Representatives at the plenary some days ago passed through second reading a bill to mandate medical doctors to practice in Nigeria for at least 5 years before moving abroad if they want. The proposed bill was sponsored by Honorable Ganiyu Johnson, who is representing Oshodi Isolo 2 Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, Abuja. In his lead debate, Johnson said the proposed legislation seeks to cure the exodus of brain drain and build manpower in the medical sector. He opined that Nigeria-trained medical or dental practitioners must work in the country for a minimum of 5 years before they are granted full licenses. Opposing the bill, however, Honorable Nkem Abonta, representing Ukwa East and West constituency at the House of Representatives, described it as offensive. Honorable Johnson, however, argued that it was fair for medical practitioners who had benefited from taxpayer subsidies to undergo mandatory service for a minimum number of 5 years in Nigeria before taking their skills abroad. Reacting to this, the Osun State Chairman of the National Medical Association, Dr. Adedapo Adetoye, described this bill as obnoxious in all ramifications with no good intentions.
Good morning, Nigerians. The bill proposing an amendment to the MDCN bill is obnoxious in all ramifications. That bill has no good intentions. The proponent is asking that newly graduated medical doctors trained in Nigeria should stay in the country for another 5 years so as to serve the nation. That is tantamount to slavery. It's in every way against the labor law. It is not proper. Such injustice should not be meted out to any Nigerian.
Dr. Adedapo Adetoye also admonished the federal government to treat doctors in Nigeria well, the same way they have been treated in the countries they are relocating to for greener pastures. The Chief Medical Director of Union Teaching Hospital, Osogbo, Professor Peter Babatunde Olaitan, similarly tagged the bill as an ignorant desire because the presentation of the bill itself does not show that a lawmaker knows what is going on.
I want to say that it is an ignorant desire because ignorant in the sense that the presentation of this bill itself doesn't show somebody who knows what is really going on. One is that doctors are not the only ones that get their training subsidized in the country. Every student that goes to the public institution gets a studentship subsidized by the government, federal or state. So to now say that you want to restrict a particular group of people, doctors especially, asking them to stay for 5 years before they can get license, that's another ignorant part of it. If you say a doctor must not get license fully until he spends 5 years, what you are saying is that that doctor cannot practice certain things until his 5 years, which is not a usual cause.
Professor Olaitan stated that it is not only doctors that get their training subsidized, but every student who attends a government institution. Dr. Patrick Osituk practices in a private hospital, also tagged the bill as outrageous and described the work condition in Nigeria as hostile.
Well, in my own opinion, I think the bill is outrageous, but I must say it doesn't come as a surprise because we have had this problem where the government has always had misplaced priorities. Now, in order for you to come up with such a bill, first of all, there are certain questions that you must ask, one of which is why are we leaving? Why are doctors leaving? There are many factors, but on top of that list are the working conditions. The working conditions are very, very hostile. Now, take for example, I served in the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital under the state government. I had to go for 6 months without any pay, without any salary. I did not receive salary for 6 months, after which the salaries were inconsistent. I got COVID twice, and I was never for once paid any form of hazard allowance or anything. And most of my colleagues, they have similar stories, if not worse. So you find out also the residency training program is greatly flawed. You have people who spend 10 years for a 4-year residency program. You go to the public hospitals, they are not well equipped. Take for example, how can you in a whole state, you don't have a functioning CT scan machine? I feel it's a shame. So these our lawmakers are supposed to be focusing on important issues like this. How do we improve the welfare of these essential service providers? How do we equip these hospitals better? Okay, why are they leaving? They are leaving because there is better pay. How do we incentivize these people to stay? But they are not looking at it from that way. So they come up with outrageous bills, which I don't think actually would hold water.
Dr. Osituk thereby advised the government to find a lasting solution as to why citizens are relocating to other countries for greener pastures. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
A former governor of Anambra State, Dr. Chinwoke Mbadinuju, has been announced dead. Mbadinuju was said to have died at the National Hospital in Abuja on Tuesday at the age of 78. Mbadinuju, who was fondly called Odera, was the Anambra governor between 1999 and 2003 under the platform of the People's Democratic Party. A press statement signed by his son, Mr. Cheta Mbadinuju, on behalf of the family on Tuesday revealed that he died after a brief illness. Moving on to the foreign scene, junior doctors in the United Kingdom have officially begun a full-day strike in England. The industrial action, which is due to last until Saturday morning, started at about 7 a.m. local time. This comes as government insists there will be no pay talks with the union unless junior doctors abandon their starting position of a 35% rise and call off the strikes. UK Health Minister Steve Barclay said the union's demands for a 35% pay rise for junior doctors were not fair or reasonable. He also said the timing of the strike was regrettable and accused the British Medical Association of putting patients at greater risk with the latest action. However, the BMA Council Deputy Chair, Dr. Emma Ranswick, defended the union's position, adding that it was open to talks, but the government's preconditions are getting in the way.
We have been asking Steve Barclay to put forward a credible offer for months and months and months. We even offered last week to suspend action, even at short notice, if the Health Secretary was willing to put a credible offer on the table, and he has declined to do so. We've had no offer whatsoever. We're not included in the wider NHS offer. We've had absolutely nothing but more and more preconditions. At the last set of industrial action, we maintained safe care, urgent, critical, maternity care, all maintained. We had regular meetings with NHS England. I'm fairly confident that safety can be maintained through strike action by junior doctors, but it does cause disruption. It's not something any of us want. What we want is pay restoration so that we can reverse our workforce crisis and get back to giving patients the care that they really deserve. We've been asking since last August for a reversal of the real terms pay cuts that we've suffered since 2008. So we've lost 26.1% since 2008. If you take £25 away from 100, that's £75. To get £25 back, that's a third of £25. So we're only asking for a reversal of pay cuts.
In the meantime, Kenya's President William Ruto says the country will not take out loans to pay civil servants, even as union groups threaten to go on strike over unpaid March salaries. President Ruto blames the salary delays on the country's huge public debt, with some of the loans coming to maturity this month. The president made this known in a press conference, stating that salaries would be paid from taxes collected by the Revenue Authority. At least 2 workers' umbrella bodies have issued notices to down tools this week if they are not paid their dues. Kenya's public debt now amounts to 65% of its national revenue.
Enrolling and then do the others later, because we have to live within our means. I want to assure you and assure the country that we are well on course in running a stable economy that is not dependent on unnecessary, excessive borrowing. I know we had an issue of delayed salaries, which is, somebody said, it is the first time that we are having delayed salaries. Yes, it is the first time we are having delayed salaries, but it's also the first time we are having such monumental debts. I want to assure the country that that is managed. We have turned the corner. All I assure the country is this: the commitment I made that we are not going to borrow money to spend on recurrent expenditure, including salaries. That is the position of the government of Kenya. We will not do that. We will look for our taxes, and I want to commend the Kenya Revenue Authority for what they are doing. They are today at 95% of their commitment.
United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has said the people of Somalia are the greatest victims of climate change, despite not contributing to it. Mr. Guterres made this known in a press conference with Somalian President during his visit to the East African nation. Mr. Guterres called for massive international support at the start of a visit to the country, which is in the midst of a severe drought. He noted that nearly 5 million people are experiencing high levels of acute food insecurity, with rising prices making matters worse. The UN has launched a multi-billion-dollar appeal for Somalia, where millions are facing famine.
And I'm also here to ring the alarm on the need of massive international support. Massive international support because of the humanitarian difficulties the country is facing, massive humanitarian support in relation to the build-up of a security capacity in Somalia, and massive humanitarian support in stabilization and development of the country. Somalia is experiencing its worst series of 5 years of drought in recorded history. And I hope that the rain that is coming will persist and will help address the very challenging situation that was created in the country by droughts. And although Somalis make virtually no contribution to climate change, as a matter of fact, Somalia contributes with 0.003% to the emissions that cause climate change. Although Somalia make virtually no contribution to climate change, the Somalis are among the greatest victims.
In the United States, police say 5 people were killed when an employee opened fire at a bank in Louisville, Kentucky, and live streamed the attack on Instagram. The shooting took place at the Old National Bank in the city center, with police responding within 3 minutes and fatally shooting the attacker in a gunfire exchange. This is the latest in a mass shooting that has rocked America since the turn of the year, with several cases reported in Tennessee, California, amongst others.
At least 5 people have been killed in a mass shooting at a bank in downtown Louisville, Kentucky, in what the mayor described as an evil act of targeted violence. Craig Greenberg vowed that the city would come together to prevent horrific acts of gun violence from continuing.
Our community will continue to come together. We will find ways to love and support one another and the families and friends who have been directly impacted by these acts of gun violence, and we will come together as a community to work to prevent these horrific acts of gun violence from continuing here and around the state.
The Louisville Metro Police Department, LMPD, identified the shooter on Monday as Connor Sturgeon, a 23-year-old employee of the Old National Bank, where the incident took place. Sturgeon killed 5 colleagues and wounded 9 other people, including 2 police officers, as he live-streamed his attack on his workplace. Police said he was killed after exchanging fire with law enforcement officers. The gunman was fatally shot at the scene, Louisville police said. It was unclear whether he was slain by police or took his own life.
3 minutes of being dispatched, officers arrived on scene and encountered the suspect almost immediately, still firing gunshots. Officers exchanged gunshots with that suspect, and ultimately that suspect did die at the scene. We are trying to confirm if that suspect died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or was killed by officers at this time.
Sturgeon was an intern at the bank for 3 summers from 2018 to 2020 before becoming a full-time employee in 2022 as a portfolio banker, according to his LinkedIn profile page. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear described the incident as awful during a news briefing. Holding back tears, Beshear urged compassion for survivors. He later revealed that some of his closest friends were victims of the shooting.
Kentucky State Police have requested in the Louisville Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods in this response. This is awful. I have a very close friend that didn't make it today. And I have another close friend who didn't either, and one who's at the hospital that I hope is going to make it through. So when we talk about praying, I hope people will. For those that we are hoping can make it through the surgeries that they're going through, and then we've got to do what we have done these last 3 years after everything. We've got to wrap our arms around these families.
A police officer was among the 9 wounded. A 26-year-old recent police academy graduate was struck in the head and remained in critical condition after brain surgery on Monday, police said. The dead were identified as Joshua Barrick, 40, Diana Eckert, 57, Thomas Elliott, 63, Juliana Farmer, 45, and James Stewart, 64.
With heartfelt condolences, prayers to the family of those who lost their life today.
President Joe Biden responded to news of the shooting by reiterating his wish that Congress pass legislation requiring safe storage of firearms, background checks for all gun sales, and elimination of gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. Mass shootings have become commonplace in the United States, which has experienced 146 so far in 2023, the most at this point in the year since 2016. Temitope Ajijalaoluola, Western Spring Television News.
Still ahead, President Buhari grants free trade zone status to Ekiti Knowledge Zone. We have more on these and other business stories after this break. Please stay with us.
Olayinka Herbert Macaulay, politician, nationalist and journalist, was the first Nigerian to qualify as a civil engineer, surveyor and architect. Born on November 14, 1864, Herbert Macaulay was the founder of Nigeria's National Democratic Party, the first political party in pre-independent Nigeria. Scholars of Nigeria's political history describe Herbert Macaulay as the intellectual bulldog of 19th century Nigerian nationalist movement, in deference to his qualities as founder and leader of two foremost political parties, Nigeria National Democratic Party (NNDP) and National Council of Nigerian Citizens (NCNC). His matchless versatility in party organization and control kept the British colonialists on their toes in the entire span of his active life. After his death on 7th May 1946, Herbert Macaulay remains a hero of his country, which recognized his anti-colonial struggles. Today, Nigeria's 10 naira coin bears his oval face and trademark mustache. Western Spring Television identifies Herbert Macaulay as a major character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. Now to business. President Muhammadu Buhari has granted a free trade zone status to the Ekiti Knowledge Zone. Ifedayo Shayo, Special Advisor on Media to Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Niyi Adebayo, announced the development in a statement. Free trade zones are areas in which businesses are exempted from the normal regime applicable in Nigeria. However, the government expects such companies to boost national exports, create jobs, and help in diversifying the country's economy by bringing in new activities. Mr. Shayo said the president's approval followed a request by the trade minister. Global audit and tax advisory firm KPMG has projected that Nigeria's unemployment rate is expected to rise to 40.6% compared to 2022's 37.7%. KPMG details this forecast in its International Global Economic Outlook report today. It stated that unemployment is expected to continue to be a major challenge in 2023 due to the limited investment by the private sector, low industrialization, and slower than required economic growth, and the inability of the economy to absorb the 4 to 5 million new entrants into the Nigerian job market every year. The report also revealed that there are expectations for GDP to continue to grow at a relatively slow pace of 3% in 2023, owing to the slowdown in economic activity that typically characterizes periods of political transition in Nigeria. It also said the spillover from an expected slowdown in the global economy in 2023 and its trade and financial flow implications are expected to drag on GDP. Meanwhile, the World Bank has made a slight increase to its global growth outlook for 2023. The International Financial Institution is now forecasting 2% growth for 2023, up from a 1.7% forecast in January. In his opening address at the 2023 World Bank IMF Spring Meetings, President of World Bank David Malpass said despite the upward revision, the pace of global growth would slow this year compared with 3.1% in 2022. The World Bank also predicted that the economic slowdown in developing countries would persist for years. The bank said the slowdown would further increase debt distress for developing countries. Mr. Malpass said he had advocated a range of new policies that will spur production to combat inflation and currency weakness. Still in business, United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will this week push for urgent resolution of requests by Zambia and Ghana for restructuring of the sovereign debts. U.S. Treasury Undersecretary Jay Shamburg stated that Ms. Yellen will also push for concrete steps to speed up the overall debt relief process and make it more predictable. Ms. Yellen is slated to meet counterparts from around the world during this week's meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Mr. Shamburg further disclosed that during the meeting, the Treasury Secretary will push to conclude a debt treatment for Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, Zambia, and Ghana have already defaulted on their overseas debt and are working towards debt reworks with creditors.
But we also have important work to do to make sure we're supporting Ukraine. So it's really important that the IMF just on March 31st approved a new program for Ukraine for about $16 billion over the next 4 years. And that'll really be helpful to underpin the economy and have important reforms attached to it. And so that's another really important thing that we'll be working on. And lastly, and not lastly in the sense of importance, but just last on my list, we'll talk a lot about debt. So there are a number of countries struggling with debt distress. There is an approach that we've been trying to use, the common framework, the G20 blessed, to try to help low-income countries in debt distress. It's not working fast enough, and we have a lot of work to do this week to try to get that process working better.
Welcome to sports. Super Falcons of Nigeria today hammered 2023 World Cup co-host New Zealand 3-0 in their second friendly game in Turkey. It is the Falcons' second win in Turkey after urging World Cup debutant Haiti 2-1 last Friday. Goals from captain Onome Ebi, Jennifer Echegini, and Desire Okwaranozie secured the comfortable win for the 9-time African champions. The Falcons are in Group B alongside Australia, Canada, and debutant Republic of Ireland at this year's Women's World Cup. They will open their campaign against Canada on July 21st in Melbourne. Nigerian striker Victor Osimhen will sit out Napoli's UEFA Champions League quarter-final first leg tie against AC Milan at the San Siro tomorrow. Osimhen picked up an injury to his left abductor while representing Nigeria on international duty last month. The 24-year-old has missed the Partenope's last 2 games. The forward trained on his own and also worked on the gym yesterday as Napoli stepped up preparations for the game. But any hope he could make a return against AC Milan has now been dashed by the latest comment from President Aurelio De Laurentiis, who said the team hopes to have Osimhen back for the return fixture on April 18th. Osimhen has scored 4 goals in 5 appearances in the Champions League for Napoli this season. In the meantime, Real Madrid head coach Carlo Ancelotti says he's sad about Chelsea's form this season as he prepares to face his former sides in the Champions League. Real and Ancelotti, who won the Premier League and FA Cup with the Blues in 2010, welcome Chelsea to the Bernabeu tomorrow for their quarter-final first leg. Chelsea are 11th in the league and suffered early FA and League Cup exits, and they are on their 3rd manager of the season in interim boss Frank Lampard. Lampard, who was appointed as Graham Potter's replacement until the end of the season, was a Chelsea player under Ancelotti during the 63-year-old Italian's 2 years in charge. Lampard is in his 2nd spell as Blues boss, and Ancelotti is confident the 44-year-old can turn the club's fortunes around.
Chelsea in the state that it's in, nearer the bottom of the table than the top, given that you won the Premier League title with them? And if asked, would you consider going back to help them?
Again, I'm sad. Yes, I have a fantastic memory of this club, of the people that are still working there, and I am a supporter of Chelsea, of course, because I spent 2 years really nice there. Be back? No, I think that Lampard, I hope that Lampard is able to do a fantastic job with them.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. The House of Representatives ad hoc committee on all theft is inviting several high-ranking officials of the federal government over its investigation into the alleged loss of over $2.4 billion in revenue from illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil export in 2015. The All Progressives Congress, APC, is asking the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal to dismiss the petition filed by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi. 3 suspects have been arrested after gunmen suspected to be hired assassins killed a chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, Sylvester Efe-Hurobo, in Delta State. And on the foreign scene, we brought you news that junior doctors in the United Kingdom have officially begun a 4-day strike in England. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Thanks indeed for watching the news at 7. I am Damilola Raphael. Do have a restful evening.